You're in a relationship with a narcissist, but one of the reasons that you don't want to leave them is because you do actually have good memories with them. If you're new here, I share my personal experiences having suffered from narcissistic abuse in both intimate family relationships to help other people heal. This is one thing that I find it really hard to explain to people who have never been in a narcissistically abusive relationship. Because when you tell people, I was abused, 9 times out of 10 they'll say, well, why didn't you just leave? What people don't understand is that something called a trauma bond is formed. A trauma bond means that your narcissistic abuser is both the person who is abusing you, whether they're abusing you mentally, emotionally, psychologically, financially, physically, sexually. There's all kinds of ways a narcissistic abuser could abuse you. But they do some sort of abuse, and then they follow that up with love and tenderness and affection. Basically, they're the person that is both hurting you and healing you at the same time. What that does is it leaves our body in this state of trauma. Our cortisol levels go way up. We don't really understand how to process that. And so when someone is both hurting us, then loving us, what our mind does, what our nervous system does, is it tries to get past those really bad and really abusive times and tries to help us get back to those better times or those good times. After a while, it's almost like we become blind, sort of, in a way, to the negative abuse that's happening to us. It's not that we completely don't see it any longer, but we go through a lot of rationalization about why it's okay, or why it was okay this time, or why, well, it's not always the case that this happens, etc., etc. We make a lot of excuses for our narcissistic abuser. So then we get around to these good times where they are affectionate to us. Remember, this is also part of that narcissistic cycle. The first stage in that cycle is love bombing. That's where all these really good memories happen. The second stage is devaluing. That's where a lot of the abuse happens. The third stage is discarding, and that doesn't have to be a breakup. The fourth thing that happens is that hoovering, meaning they're going to suck you back into the situation, and they're going to start right back at number 1 with love bombing. That's when all these great memories happen. We do actually have great times and great experiences with our narcissists. Hell, we fell in love with the narcissist during the love bombing stage. They can be really charming people. One thing I've come to realize after leaving my narcissistic abuser that I was in a relationship with for 6.5 years is that things that I thought were really good memories, in hindsight, it's not so great because I was spending those times with a really, really abusive person. I've taken the time to try to figure out how can I replace that memory with something better. As an example, when I got engaged to my narcissistic abuser, it happened in the same vicinity of where I am taking a side trip after Thanksgiving with a family member of mine. I get to now say, I went to that place with this other person, and it was a much more positive experience, and it was filled with a lot of love. I got to do things that I wanted to do when I was there even. There's gonna be so many different things. So even though, again, it was a positive memory that I used and reflected back upon for a long time, in hindsight, those positive memories actually weren't. Because how can it be such a great memory if you know you were spending it with someone who was abusive to you? It's hard to untangle that. It takes a lot of time through both talk therapy and EMDR treatments through therapy. That's where you can finally start to break apart that trauma bond so that you can actually heal.